a really important presentation for us. Then we're going to talk about capital projects on campus, things happening here in Building 5, and the UC Research Building, which I'm sure you've heard is underway. So let's start with Susan. Susan.
Thank you, Brent. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to autumn. I hope everyone had a lovely Labor Day weekend, even though it was hot and smoky. But we are so resilient, and that's part of what I wanted to do this morning, was to greet you and say thank you. We're heading into autumn. Like our spring and our summer, it will be unprecedented and like nothing we've ever experienced before. And what I would say to you all who are tremendous leaders here at ZSFG, thank you. Thank you for your creativity, for your resilience, and thank you especially for your service to our team here, to our patients, and to our community. At no time ever has it been more important, and I just want to extend my deep gratitude to all of you for that. As Brent said, we're going to have 3 general topics this morning. So with respect to COVID, we're experiencing a dip in cases right now, which is wonderful after the 2 last peaks. We know that it's likely that will not continue and that we'll need to be ready for anything like with everything else. And Dr. Lisa Winston will tell us more about this. Our flu program this year is going to be new and aggressive like it's never been before, because it's never been more important to be vaccinated, and we'll hear more about that from our occupational health team. Check out my note today, and just remember 90% in 90 days. And then last but not least, we'll hear from Terry Saltz. So throughout this pandemic, we are still recreating our campus here. And what is really important to remember is that in 3 to 5 years, the campus is going to look completely different than it does today. We're going to have an ambulatory building of the future. We're going to have a new research and academic building where the BC parking lot was before. And it's just going to be tremendous and great service for all of us and our patients. Once again, thank you. Please, during this time, do not hesitate to reach out to your directors and executives for the support you need. We are completely dedicated to supporting you and the whole team here. And it's really important to remember that you have help, you have support, and we're here for you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa Winston.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I hope you can hear me okay here. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning. So I get to cover 2 important topics. I'm going to start by giving you an update about COVID. And then we'll be happy to take any questions later. And then I get to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is influenza vaccination. And I will start with some general comments, followed by John Tambus from Occupational Health, who's going to talk about the exciting details of our program here this year. So in terms of what's been going on with COVID, Susan let us know that we have had some better news, particularly locally in terms of numbers. When you think about what's going on across the world, we continue to have, it continues to be very variable depending where you are. But the 3 countries that have had the greatest number of cases continue to be the United States, unfortunately, as number 1. Brazil is number 2, and India as number 3. And many people have probably heard that the surge in India has been of significant concern, given the very large population there. Across the U.S., overall cases have tended to be down. But again, it depends where you are. So there is a new hotspot over the last short period of time in South Dakota, for example. But some of the Western hotspots, California, Arizona, we have actually been doing a little bit better. And I think one of the things people were very concerned about in California with the wildfires was, were we going to see a surge because people were having a harder time maintaining shelter in place? But fortunately, that has gone okay, and most places in California are maintaining to slightly decreased. Moving to San Francisco, we are doing a bit better. However, Labor Day weekend was hot. It was smoky, as mentioned. It was a hard time. We're not sure how well people were able to maintain shelter-in-place measures. And we're reminded of the fact that our last surge, when we were up to 44 hospitalized patients here at ZSFG, occurred after the 4th of July holiday period. So we are continuing to watch, but we are down in terms of our number of hospitalized patients. We've been running in the 10 to 15 range most of the days over the last 10 days or so. So that has been good news for us, and we're crossing our fingers that we'll be able to maintain to potentially improve. In terms of what else is going on in San Francisco, many topics being discussed by our health department, by our mayor. Some of the key ones have been schools. So independent schools are, private schools are hoping that they may be able to reopen on a limited basis with some in-person instruction in the not too distant future. And there's been a lot of focus on public schools and when students will be able to come back, at least in some capacity, for their public school education. Maintaining shelter in place, as I mentioned, maintaining masking continues to be a huge focus and one that we all can help with and can help support. And then another really big topic at the local public health level is community testing. So we do a lot of testing in San Francisco. We do a lot of testing associated with the hospital. As you know, we test everyone who's admitted to the hospital. We're testing people before procedures. But some of the testing that's happening in San Francisco is not always concentrated in our populations that are at highest risk. And so from a public health perspective, there is a move to try to have as much testing as possible in the communities where there is the most transmission. So I'll move away. That was a long segue in epidemiology. We'll talk a little bit about therapeutics, and then I'll just make a quick mention of vaccines. So in terms of therapeutics, we do have a few more things in our arsenal now. So I think many people are aware of the antiviral drug remdesivir that was approved under emergency use authorization for hospitalized patients receiving oxygen earlier this year. So two good pieces of news on the remdesivir front. Probably the best piece of news is that our supply is substantially better than it was before. So we have been able to get enough remdesivir for the patients who need it. Of course, we're keeping a close eye on that. The other thing that's really interesting about remdesivir is that a new study came out that showed that there might be some modest benefit in hospitalized patients who are less sick, the ones who don't need oxygen. And so we are exploring whether we might expand our use of remdesivir somewhat to that patient population as well, particularly if we are not experiencing supply issues. Another big story on the therapeutics front has been steroids. So many people may remember earlier this summer, a pivotal trial came out. It was called the Recovery Trial from the United Kingdom that showed that a steroid called dexamethasone was very helpful in reducing the mortality for the sickest patients in the hospital, those who were on a lot of oxygen, and those who required ventilatory support in the ICU. And there have now been several other trials that have been published just in the last week that supported the use of steroids for our sickest patients and showed that we seem to be on the right track there. So that is good news. And there are a lot of trials continuing on the inpatient side here at San Francisco General and at UCSF. I will just point out, though, that we had something very exciting happen here, which is our first monoclonal antibody study opened, and that is an outpatient study here at San Francisco General. Our first patient has been enrolled, and there's been a lot of focus on the inpatient side and treating people once they get sick. But it would be really great if we had therapeutic strategies that we could use earlier to prevent people from getting as sick and needing to be in the hospital. So very excited about that. And then the last thing I'll say on the therapeutics front, and just a quick word about this, is convalescent plasma, because you may have heard about this somewhat controversial topic. So the FDA approved it under emergency use authorization. And some controversy about that at our scientific levels, because we're really still waiting for the randomized clinical trial data for that to come out. So we do have plasma available here, but we are participating in one of the clinical trials, and we're really looking forward to more trial data coming out very soon that should help us to know how we should be using plasma. The good thing is we have received a lot of safety data on plasma, and it does appear to be safe. And then the last topic I was going to cover for COVID is vaccines. So I think many people have heard vaccines have certainly been in the news. I am not going to touch on the politics of vaccines, but there are several vaccines that are in very large scale phase 3 clinical trials, which means that they are being looked at not just for safety, but actually for efficacy. Can they prevent people from getting sick with COVID? And one of those vaccine trials is going on here on our campus. So lots of interesting things going on the scientific side of COVID. So happy to take questions later on, but I just wanted to turn now to the next topic, which is the flu or influenza. And as I said, I'm fortunate to get to set the stage for my colleagues in occupational health. So as you know, and as Dr. Ehrlich is going to remind everyone in her CEO note today, we've spent a lot of time thinking about COVID and worrying about it, but flu is something that comes every year that we know causes thousands of deaths in the United States. And the best way that we can prevent flu is by getting the vaccine. And even though our vaccine is not perfect, it prevents influenza in many years, and up to 60 to even in a great year, 70% of people. Sound perfect to me, but in addition to being able to prevent people from getting the flu, it prevents hospitalizations from the flu. It prevents people from going to the intensive care unit if they get the flu, and it prevents transmission of the flu in healthcare settings. And so we will all be getting our flu vaccines, and we think that it is really important that everybody else does as well. In fact, the University of California this year thinks it is so important that everybody get their influenza vaccine, their flu shot, that they are requiring it for all of their employees and students by November 1st. So there will be more information about that And John will be providing a little more information about UCSF's campaign on this campus. But we are certainly expecting that UCSF folks on this campus will be getting vaccinated, and there will be a program to assist people in doing that. In terms of our program here for DPH, the goal is to have 90% of everyone vaccinated by October 31st, which is quite ambitious and exciting. And we will have champions in our various sites providing influenza vaccine. There will be roving, and this year, rather than in the cafeteria, there will be drop-in influenza vaccinations in the Wellness Center on the second floor. So we're very excited about the flu program. No shortages of vaccine this year, thankfully. And again, happy to take any questions about that later, but I think John is going to kick things off for us.
Hi, everyone. I just want to add a few things that Lisa already mentioned. So we're really excited about our flu program this year. Again, the flu station is now going to be in the Wellness Center Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And we're having a very aggressive roving program. We have 28 RNs volunteering in the hospital to help us vaccinate on the units. And we have a plan in place for that. And again, so the goal this year is to not only get 90%, but to vaccinate early. So we're really hoping that people take advantage of the ease at which you can get a vaccine this year and vaccinate early, hopefully before the end of October. We also have something that we hope will make things easier. It's called it's actually an online form. And we have a QR code as well as a link that we'll be sending staff and management forum as well as hospital employees. And we think that the online form is going to make things a lot faster in terms of getting statistics to managers as well as making it easy for the staff to fill out the consent form. It's going to be 11 questions, and hopefully with the QR code and a smartphone, this can make things much easier for us at the flu station. And UCSF will still have their own iPads and be direct entering to their hub at Parnassus, but UCSF staff can also vaccinate using our online form. So there's two ways UCSF staff can vaccinate. And I think that's about it. If you have any questions, please email. You can email me personally, or if you want to ask the management forum a question, we're here for you. Thanks a lot, and we'll.
Would you say again when flu shots are going to begin?
I'm sorry. So flu shots will begin tomorrow, and yeah, shots will begin tomorrow.
And last for how long?
The flu season lasts till the end of March, but we're focusing on early vaccination. So we're hoping 90% of staff will vaccinate in the next few months. I think that's a realistic goal. Last year, DPH staff had a 91% vaccination rate. So we think this is, with the extra staff and the focus, we think things are going to work out. Yes. And let me add, UCSF will also be at the Wellness Center as they have in previous years for the first few weeks till the end of September, and they will also be roving to UCSF units. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Tom. We'll probably get more questions for you all in just a minute. So, big push for flu vaccinations starting tomorrow. Okay, let's go to Terry Saltz, who's going to tell us about everything happening on campus.
Or at least some of everything. Good morning, I'm Terry Saltz. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on active construction on campus and talk about some of the stuff that we're planning. The first thing, as you see when you come in the morning, UCSF Academic and Research Building has gotten underway. And they are in their phase, the demolition phase of the B and C parking lot. It was pretty noisy the past week or two, a lot of concrete being broken up. We'll start seeing some of that, they got a lot done, and so that noisy work should be diminishing. But there is still some concrete work to be performed. We have a pedestrian walkway that's been built. They are going to open up a temporary truck gate on 23rd Street they're going to widen the entrance. So all the traffic will come off of 23rd Street and not into our campus. And then once they're done, they'll restore that brick and fence line. In early September, they are going to remove that brick wall, continue the demolition, remove existing utilities, and begin the installation of new underground utilities. So the noisy work is centered around the demolition and the concrete cutting. And then there'll be a lot of grading work that's starting the week of September 14th. They do have mitigation efforts underway. They're doing dust monitoring. They're misting the soil with water to keep the dust down. They're doing street sweeping. They're monitoring noise levels, and they're using flaggers to control traffic. And then as far as work that's happening inside of Building 5, there's three major efforts that are happening right now. Those are 6H surge office space, rehabilitation relocation, and the second floor poison control. These spaces will all complete construction this fall. Some of them in October, some of them in September. And then following construction completion, these projects will go through a facility fit up and transition period. That's where we bring in the furniture, hang the whiteboards, get it ready, do orientations. And in the case of rehabilitation and relocation, the transition plan will also involve a licensing review. Our general contractor, PanCal, has been producing planning documents that indicate the seismic retrofit project can start as early as January. These proposals are currently under review. This will initially impact the first floor near and in outpatient pharmacy. Their intent is to work up the building to the roof and then back down to the first floor. Before I go any further, let me reiterate some information I passed on months ago. There's basically three different efforts in the seismic retrofit project. There is the exterior work, there is the strengthening of the columns inside the building, and then the third one is what I call the cake slice, is where we're separating the M wing from the rest of the building with a 22-inch seismic gap. That work is going to shut down the corridors on the M wings and will require some units to be relocated while the work is being done. But they're starting on the first floor with the pharmacy. We will provide more information as the plans firm up. At the same time as they do the pharmacy work, PanCal would like to begin the Clin Lab track automation project, since it will also impact the pharmacy. We're kind of trying to kill two birds with one stone there. Facilities department has installed a temporary backup 500-ton chiller at the power plant. This will remain through the extreme heat season every year until the central chiller plant is replaced. This will be a 3-year effort. My next topic I want to bring up is parking. So, as you all are aware, SFMTA has not been enforcing street parking through the COVID response. But they are planning on starting their street parking restrictions throughout the city on September 14th, 2020. So we've kept the off-site San Bruno lot parking fees free in alignment with the SFMTA non-enforcement. The $104 per month parking fee will be reinstated beginning in October. All San Bruno Parkers should plan on making a payment by October 1st. We will be sending out a communication flyer regarding the details of this change. Additionally, we have been monitoring on campus and parking lot garage usage. It's difficult to gauge the actual usage because of COVID. Just when we took away the B and C lot, that's when COVID hit, so we weren't really able to gauge the demand. And then with the parking restrictions being relaxed, it really makes it difficult to gauge what the usage is. But we do believe that we can, by looking at the current usage, that we could free up some numbers on the waiting list. So we'll be releasing about 25 to 50 permits and monitor it and see how it goes. That's both for the parking garage and the campus. The last thing I want to bring up before I leave is a little bit of trash talk. PPE on Kansas Street. Our neighbors are reporting a high level of PPE related trash building up on the streets. So please instruct staff to be mindful of our neighbors, dispose of PPE and other debris appropriately. Thank you very much. Don't go anywhere.
So what is the next thing our staff are going to see and hear from the research building? What's the next thing we'll see?
So there's going to be a constant noise level coming from there. They're going to have excavators. They're going to be digging through the site. They're going to be building the foundation. Then they're going to build the structure. Then they're going to put the skin on the building. And then all the work will be in the interior of the building. From our experience with the rebuild, we know that there's basically 3 big milestones of noise. And that is the excavation noise that we're experiencing now, the site prep and excavation. And then things should settle down. The individual small projects happening with the utility laydown and demolition. But then when the steel construction happens, I do want to mention though that the construction project did choose to drill their foundation, their pilings into the ground rather than pounding them. If they were pounding, that would be very disturbing to the neighborhood and to us. So the drilling is going to be the noise of the drilling rigs, but it'll be the pounding sound that's very disruptive. So once the steel goes up, there'll be the bolting of the steel members, which is very noisy. And that's, I don't have a timeline, but that's some distance away in the future. And then of course, when they lay the deck down in the building, that gets pretty noisy too. But for now, I think we've gone over a hurdle of noise, and I expect it to be, where there is some concrete demo left to be done, I think it'll be a little bit less noise in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, 1 second. Here's another question. Will Laz be opening spaces in the garage?
Yeah, we're gonna release some stalls in the parking garage as well as the campus.
Okay. All right. Oh yeah, I sure will. I sure will. Hi, back again. So just want to remind you, we have a chat function. Please send your questions in. We want to make sure that we get to as many questions as you have in the next few minutes that we have. So what I'd like to do is, if I could ask Lisa to come back up for a second, I have a couple of questions for you. Thank you. Okay, so Lisa, a couple of things. Could you talk a little bit about COVID vaccine and research being done on that, possibly?
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple things that are going on, but and many people, you know, have probably heard that the federal government is sponsoring a program called Operation Warp Speed. And the whole idea about that is that as the large scale clinical trials are going on, and they are going on with a number of selected vaccines now, including one that I mentioned in San Francisco here, with San Francisco General being the site. But as those trials are going on, and those trials, which will enroll about 30,000 people each for each vaccine, and they're looking at both safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. But at the same time that that's happening, manufacturing of the vaccine is also ramping up. Which is, is very unusual. Typically what happens with vaccines is they are, studied very methodically over a long period of time, and then manufacturing doesn't start until after the phase 3 trials are completed, and that can take a long period of time. So the hope is that once the trials are completed and we have data, we will actually start to have vaccine doses that are available quite quickly. Now, I don't think anybody expects that we're going to have vaccine doses for everybody as soon as the trials are completed and we have data, but at least we should be able to start vaccinating some of our highest risk groups while manufacturing continues. The other thing that I think may be different is that there are a number of vaccine candidates that are in trials right now. So there may be several different vaccines that become available rather than just one.
Thanks. Another couple of questions here. Will we be doing flu COVID testing of patients simultaneously?
Yes, that is a terrific question. Will we be doing combined flu and COVID testing of patients? We certainly hope so. Our lab is actually really excited about that and hoping that we will have a cartridge that will allow us with one swab to test for flu and COVID at the same time. It looks like it's quite a good test. I think the challenge will be just like we want this test because we think it'll be really important as the flu season starts. Everybody else wants this test also. And so we'll have to see what the availability is. But we certainly expect that we will be testing our patients for both flu and COVID. It would just be really nice if we could do it with one test kit and just one swab. So stay tuned for that. And as with our COVID testing, how it's been since March, we do sometimes go through changes in terms of, what's available, the specific swabs that we use and whatnot. So I think we should be prepared to be a little bit flexible, and that we may have different options available at different times during the flu season.
One more quick question.
Yeah.
Are we going to get saliva testing for COVID?
Yeah. So another really good question, are we going to have saliva testing for COVID? So saliva testing is really interesting. Many people have heard about this. This is where instead of having your nose swabbed, you spit in a cup and the saliva is tested instead of the nasal swab. We don't have any immediate plans to have it here through our laboratory. One of the biggest interests with saliva testing is whether people are going to be able to roll it out to do testing in more community type settings and to do more frequent testing. Right now, the saliva tests, depending which, and some of them look pretty sensitive. Some of them probably aren't quite as sensitive. They don't pick up virus quite as well as the standard tests that we're using. So we don't have any immediate plans to be bringing it on board here, but our lab is actually looking at all of the different tests that are available. There is interest in the saliva test of whether you can do a very rapid test without having to do what's called an extraction step. But that's still being worked on to see how effective that will be. So I think just like our testing has evolved over the last few months, we may see some changes coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry,
actually,
go
I
ahead.
think I forgot to mention one thing, and this may be very obvious to everyone, which might be why I forgot to mention it. But why do we have such a big push for influenza vaccine or flu vaccine this year in the setting of COVID? And the reason, of course, there's really two reasons. So one is we're concerned about resources and COVID utilization of our healthcare and our beds, our hospital beds, our ICU beds, our clinics. And so we certainly want to keep people as healthy as possible from the flu in terms of the amount of healthcare that people will need to use. But the other thing, as I'm sure everyone is aware, is that there is just a lot of overlap between the symptoms of the flu and the symptoms of COVID. And so the more we can avoid people having the flu and having those symptoms, the better it will be in terms of people being worried about whether they have COVID, needing to do testing, needing to be off work, all of those things. So those are important every year, but they're especially important this year because of the overlap between flu and COVID symptoms.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Could we get an occupational health person, John? Got a question for you.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is, what is the process if employees refuse to take the flu vaccine?
That's a very good question. So it's actually, we are strongly encouraging staff to vaccinate, but there's really no concrete plan in place to address a person who does not participate. What we do have the option for that employee to sign a declination form. Because everyone's masking, of course, normally we require that person to mask in just a flu season. So we're a little different from UCSF in that DPH right now does not have the regulations in place to mandate flu vaccine. But again, it's a public safety and health issue for your coworkers, your patients, your community. So we're hoping, last year we got 91%, and we are expecting, because of COVID, to have up to 95% this year. And so I hope that answers the question. It's still, we work with HR to get more regulatory information about mandating it for DPH employees.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Warm up, Terry. I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but first I want to talk about trash. I want to talk trash for a second. So Terry mentioned that we are hearing from our campus neighbors. They have mentioned that they've seen an uptick in trash, and I don't think, I hope that no one watching feels like I'm singling out our staff as the sole source of the trash in the neighborhood. That's not correct. We know that there are a lot of people contributing to trash in the neighborhood. We know that we hand out masks to everyone who comes here, whether they're members of staff or patients or visitors. And we know that some of the masks and other PPE are ending up in the neighborhood. All I'm asking is that each one of us do our part to make sure that what we're responsible for gets put into the appropriate trash receptacle and not dropped in the street. And if we all do that, at least we can say to our neighbors that we're doing our best to keep their neighborhood safe and clean. Okay. So Terry, I have a question for you. Come on up.
How exciting.
So the question for you is about it was about building 10 in particular, but it probably has to do more with the buildings that don't have central HVAC systems, that don't have recirculated and cleaned air, especially as we're worried about air quality, especially as we're concerned that we're just at the very beginning of fire season in California. Is there some capital approach to improving the air quality of workspaces?
Well, of course, we're doing everything we can to make sure that the filter banks and the working systems that for the buildings that do have mechanical systems are working appropriately, and that they stay running. For the buildings that do not have mechanical systems, luckily we are already masking, so you have that benefit. But there's not much that can be done mechanically other than closing the windows, and which is difficult when it gets hot. So it's you got to use your best judgment on whether you do temperature control with the windows, or if you open the windows for cooling purposes. We have supplied portable fans in waiting rooms and exam areas, in the clinical areas, but we operate in buildings that do not have state-of-the-art mechanical systems, which is why we're building new buildings and we're creating new spaces and we're trying to migrate people out of the old brick buildings into the new buildings. But there's no magic wand, there's no magic money to create electrical and mechanical systems in buildings that just don't have them.
Anybody else want to weigh in on air quality, how it might affect staff health, or what staff can do about it? No.
Hi, Kara. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we will, for next month, or next month at the very least, but before then, we will put out messages to staff about what we can do to mitigate, what we can do to reasonably mitigate the issues with fire and air quality.
And I believe Mike Harris is also taking measurements
Yes.
and for particulate.
Yes, that's right,
Yeah.
Mike Harris is.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
thank you, sir. Okay. Actually, Lisa, would you pop back in? Sorry, I keep making you jump up and down.
That's okay. Okay.
Okay, so could you talk about the LACC and whether that's still in play, whether it's still part of our plans and so forth?
Yeah, so the low acuity care sites, which the goal is if hospital capacity is overwhelmed, that patients could be transferred who need lower levels of, hospital type care, IV fluids, IV antibiotics, those sorts of things, but who do not need the same degree of monitoring that some of our patients in the hospital do. These sites would not be caring for COVID patients, but could provide some respite from the for the acute hospitals. So my understanding is that development has proceeded, but that there are no current plans for patients to be seen yet at these sites, because thankfully the current capacity in San Francisco has not been overwhelmed in terms of the hospital level capacity, and these are really sites that would be opened if we needed them in an emergency, if COVID or other conditions are getting worse. So I think they are an alternative that can be utilized if needed, but I am not aware of any immediate plans to put them in place.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions before I get up?
No, I think that's it. I'm gonna ask John back, though.
Okay.
So John, here's the question for you. If one of our staff gets a flu vaccine from someone else, from a provider or Walgreens or somewhere else, what is the process for that?
Very good question. I should have brought that up earlier. So it's same as last year. Both the online form and we also have paper forms for people who aren't able to use the online form, have the option for you to tell us where you vaccinated and the date, and the hospital gets credit as a vaccination for that process.
How often did that happen last year?
About 11% of the hospital DPH employees vaccinated elsewhere, and there are a variety of reasons for that. I mean, a lot of people prefer vaccination with their private physician or clinician because they keep a record, a clinical record in their system, so they want that continuity. So plenty of people do vaccinate elsewhere. Yeah, so ideally, if you could bring a receipt of vaccine, that is the preferred method for us to document that. So this year, vaccine is quadrivalent and it's preservative free. So there's, to our knowledge, no thimerosal in the vaccine, and that is a big plus for us in the past. We've had to have a separate process for people who are allergic to thimerosal or the preservative. So we're happy about that. It should be easier this year to vaccinate for those who have concerns about thimerosal.
And could you restate when it starts, when vaccination starts, what the drop-in times are on location?
Sure. So the vaccinations are beginning tomorrow. It's in the Wellness Center for the station, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And aggressive roving throughout the hospital. We have staff who are going to non-clinical units where there's no RN on site, as well as 28 RNs who will be vaccinating on their home units, various units. So that will begin immediately. We just have to provide them with the vaccine, and that will be ongoing.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to end our session today. Thanks to all the participants. Thank you for tuning in and asking great questions. The one thing I promise we will follow up on is the measurements of air quality are continuing. We will get a message out about air quality and about the best ways to mitigate health and safety risks from the air quality. We know that you're concerned. We're all concerned about air quality. We're at the very beginning of fire season in California. Got one more question coming in, which I want to address. The location of the online form. Where can staff get the online form if they've gotten their flu vaccine elsewhere?
So that will be emailed to all the managers.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Great. So all managers will receive the online form. It'll be emailed today. So it should be available from your manager. Perfect. Thank you all very much, and we will see you in October. Thank you.